What's up, and welcome to your first Nowstalgia 2021 episode. This is Pat Sheen with my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what are we bringing the people for content in the year 2021?
More of the same, but better.
But better. We have a lot to talk about today, actually, which is a pretty nice first episode. With the winter break, we were able to catch up on a lot of movies and TV shows. So we had a Playboi Carti album drop on Christmas Day. We had a a Hulu show drop, or I guess not drop, but finish up. And then we had a bunch of movies drop, and I was able to catch up on one movie that we didn't get to talk about when it first came out. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. But I wanted to check in. How was your New Year's and Christmas break?
It's quiet, as I feel like all responsible people would answer. You know,
Yep,
still welcome to chill, watch movies, as I've really occupied many of my past winter breaks, where I just really grind that tape and try and hit some stuff from the year that I had missed. And on top of that, we actually got like brand new marquee releases to add right to the queue. And obviously Wonder Woman and Soul would be those movies, but we also got George Clooney's first movie in a leading role in a very long time. That's also notable, So it was a good movie Christmas.
For sure. A lot of interesting things to be talking about. I also had a low key holiday, which allowed me to not only catch up on new things, but I've been watching a bunch of older classic films too. Actually, just watched North by Northwest again the other night.
Oh, nice.
That was a great watch.
HBO Max, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I've been crushing the Turner Classic Movie section of HBO Max, and if you don't have HBO Max, you should get it. Not only for Wonder Woman 1984, which we're going to be talking about, but for all the other stuff, really. Dave, out of all the good things that happened though during this holiday season, we got some really sad news right before 2020 ended, which 2020 one of the shittiest years, if not the shittiest year of pretty much everybody's life. But then we hear that Daniel Dumile, better known as MF Doom, passed away on Halloween, all the way back 2 months prior, and this was announced by his wife on Instagram and confirmed by his agent. And I was in total shock. And what was your response to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite like Doom to not learn about his death for 2.5 months or whatever it was. That's actually quite on brand, unfortunately. Yeah, honestly, terrible loss, goes without saying. Unexpected. I don't believe we know the cause of death. That wasn't said in the initial post. And it also often, feels, I think, tough when you think about like reclusive people like MF Doom, where someone who was an artist and a piece of culture on his own terms, and did it how exactly he wanted to. Like if like Lauryn Hill randomly passed, I feel like people would feel the same way. It's like these enigmatic people and how they've always left you wondering. But despite all that, obviously MF Doom leaves behind a incredible catalog capped off by Mad Villainy. Think about Madlib, who's been working with Freddie Gibbs of late, but in terms of producer rapper duos, 1-2 punches for a whole album, really nothing compares to that album. So we'll still have that, but yeah, quite the surprise to just randomly get right before New Year's.
Totally. And I was thinking back to the times we've been able to talk about Doom on this show, and obviously I think the only one time we really got to go in depth was Scarface Beats Metal Face back in 2018, and just how much we both really enjoyed that album and how we feel like it really got to showcase both of their talents really well. Obviously it wasn't, I think, either of their like best work, but still just like even the stuff that was like mediocre was top notch for these guys. And Doom just, man, it's funny because I thought about him the other day. I think it like just came across my Spotify when I was on shuffle, one of his songs, and I was like, we haven't heard from him in a while, but kind of just pops up whenever he's doing something. And just sad that we're not gonna get another project from him. Just a lot of a lot of very bad things in 2020. So, though it's just an arbitrary number, moving on to this new year feels hopefully like a fresh start. And but a really sad way to end it. Any last thoughts on Doom before we kind of move on?
Just listen to the music, man. It's still there.
Yeah,
I know.
go.
Unfortunately, Flying Lotus was Twitch streaming like Doom's lots of Doom's music for like a long like celebratory tribute stream, and that shit gets taken down by Twitch due to copyright. It's like this definitely I think showed a light once again on some of the antiquated ways people deal with art and when they can't monetize it every single second of its existence and kind of sucks that that comes up on a tribute stream.
Yeah, following the like Billboard 100 Twitter page, I saw that some of Doom's Mad Villainy, I think, came back into like the Billboard Top 100 albums or something like that. So cool that people were
Makes sense. Yeah.
going back to it. Um, but why don't we talk about an album that was actually at the top of the Billboard 100, which was Playboi Carti's "Whole Lotta Red," dropped on Christmas Day, which is it makes sense. Christmas very much associated with red, and this is something that we've
A
kind of
lot of it.
known was coming for about a month. I think it was like November 23rd, something like that. There was like things on. I think he made an announcement about upcoming music being released, things like that. But still a bit of a surprise release, if you will. And yeah, I guess like maybe before we jump into this album, where are you at with Playboy Cardi as an artist just in general? Are you a fan, Dave?
Well, that's the thing. It's a whole lot of red. Like it seemed to be there was real smoke with its imminent release, as you said, the past month or so. But it's an album whose that's release had many false starts and like had trended multiple times because people thought it was dropping and it didn't drop. And uh, Cardi leaks and snippets were like Uzis, but to an even greater degree, where there was just so much hype and expectation and appetite and demand for them, and all this excitement about Playboy Cardi. I think that specifically since his 2018 album Die Lit, where Cardi as an artist evolved his sound and really went hard on that quote baby voice, and like making some weird shit. Not all of it hits, but sometimes it does hit and it sounds unlike most other stuff. And he definitely found an audience with that stuff. And um, when I think back on Die Lit, I like some of it, not all of it, but some of those moments I think are really good, like Shooter with Uzi and Lean for Real with a great Skepta feature and RIP with that really memorable beat. Um, but honestly, I wasn't like super hyped on this because that loose single he officially put out last year, at me, that shit sucked. And like that really like hyped up song Pissy Pamper that was illegally uploaded to Spotify and went to the top of the viral 50 chart, even though it was not an official upload and eventually got deleted. Like I hear that song and I'm like, yeah, I don't like this either. I'm like, I think he was taking it too far for me. Cause I actually kind of liked him back in the beginning when it was just kind of like Cloudy Trap, nothing too crazy, like songs like Fetty and Broke Boy and Lost. I'm like, I like this shit. This is good.
Yep.
Now it's like it's completely unrecognizable. And then you listen to a whole lot of Red, and you can tell Cardi's just completely off the deep end. So he's definitely decreased in estimation for me. But what about you? You weren't the biggest Cardi fan in the first place.
Yeah, no, this is actually something you say a lot about, like some of the rock artists that I like. I'm trying to think of who specifically, but um, I just don't really jive with his voice. I just don't really find him like pleasurable to listen to. And then you kind of take this album, Whole Lot of Red, and I'm like, it felt very samey to me. If there was one thing that kind of stood out, it's like there's this like gothic feel to the whole thing that
Yeah,
just was very inaccessible to
he's a
me.
vampire now.
Yeah, and then you kind of bring that with some of the like lamest lyrics I think I've ever heard, and I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
was really unimpressed with this. Um, yeah, I could tell that when we were kind of texting about it off air that you obviously weren't really a fan of it either. What do you feel like made you not like it that
Well, that's
much?
the thing. It's like even if he's gonna completely commit to this baby voice stuff, the bars, the song construction still come across as really low effort and lazy,
Mhm.
which also kind of fits with his reputation. Like in 2018, I had tickets to see him, and I actually just kind of sold. I actually sold them because I was like unimpressed from like what I had seen from that tour on social media. I was like, I don't need to fucking. I know what this is gonna be like, and I didn't go. And then you think of like these songs, listen to these songs, listen to these bars. Like I think of a song like Metamorphosis, the one with Cuddy,
Mhm.
where his hook is just metamorphosis, metamorphosis over and over again. And it's like, I don't know who that's for. Like even the
Right.
people that really like this shit still as just, not too deep, just kind of fun, a little different. I don't think that's good enough for that person either. Like, and it still feels really low rent to me, and that sucks because when it was, back in the day, like think of like his first album with Magnolia, like that was like a really well constructed song. In New York, I'm Millie Rock is a great line. And like doesn't have great lines anymore. There's just, it just feels like he's just the vibe and all he knows how to be is the vibe. And there's no like, I'm actually still a rapper. And like, I know, like, listen to like Slayer, which I think is the biggest song off this album to this point. I'm a rock star. I could have joined Slayer. And like that's been the whole thing for a lot of these people that came up in SoundCloud is that they're rock stars. They're not rappers. And it's
Right.
like, but Cardiac, I don't know what that means because rock stars gave a fuck about rock and roll. Like I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. Just even from the second song, I know that this is necessarily Cardi, but this is the turnout we get from Kanye in his verse
Yeah,
is this is maybe one of the worst Kanye features we've had. And there's been a lot of them over the last
yeah.
couple of years.
Hmm.
But just a line that really stood out to me. You always asking for Buddha, you a Budapest. Just a line that I had to like literally pause the song and go back and make sure I heard it correctly because it's so bad.
I actually don't even mind that, but that's just because of the low bar most of Whole
Right.
Lotta Red is at.
Yeah, another song that I found the lyrics just to be really tough was on Punk Monk, where
Mm.
the end of the song just kept saying, "One thing I hate the most is friendly ass people." Okay, it's just doesn't like them. not
Well,
not
that's
not a
actually
fan.
that's funny to me. Punk Monk might be my favorite song or song I dislike the least off a Whole Lot of Red, and that's because he's like in the way he can. Cardi is explaining a lot of his story, and he in the process he's name dropping a lot of other rappers
Right.
and like explaining his relationships to them. And I actually thought that was kind of cool to hear. Like I think Punk Monk, like lyrically, again, grain of salt, but like lyrically, it actually was attempting to achieve something besides
Mhm.
just being nonsense like some of these other songs. Like it's an hour long album, but it's 24 tracks. And like
Yeah.
a lot of this shit, like again, it's like not much of a hook. Maybe it's repeating a few words, or like it's like barely a verse and it's all hook. Like a lot of these songs are just very half baked and kind of reminds me of criticisms of XXX Tentacion, the same thing, where it's like
Mhm.
you might have these amazing ideas in your head about sonically and what you're trying to achieve, and like you have the aesthetics to match it, but like this music is just not meeting that at this time. And
Well,
this just kind of feels like him devolving because Dialit's an album that was really heralded, and I'm not as high on as other people, but like some people like really ride for it and think it's like a landmark album for what it does.
mhm.
And I think it just makes it feel like a huge fluke at this point.
Right, and just to kind of circle back and close the door on Punk Monk, I understand what the point of him saying that at the end is, but I feel like there's just a better way to package it that doesn't sound so corny, or
Sure.
maybe just not to like repeat it over and over. And I think that's the thing is this album just felt very repetitive. It has that like I don't know if it's like a synth or what that noise was that kind of was
Mhm.
just kind of like driven throughout every single song, but it sounded almost like every song was trying to follow the same exact vibe and sonic pattern, and I just felt so bored listening to this. I was just like, ah, this is such a poor showing, a slog
Yeah.
of an album, really.
Definitely. I think the only time the production really stood out to me was on Vamp Anthem, where like I was like, okay, Vamp, yeah, they're like, this is some Castlevania ass shit in the way it sounds. Not that Cardi does a lot to add to that, but I was like, okay, that beat actually, like, I kind of get the Halloween vibe we got going on here.
Yeah, it's going back to what you were saying though. It's kind of crazy that for a person who is so mysterious, and definitely adds to I think the demand and the and his allure. He can put out something that uh, to me feels very unmemorable and really not super interesting, even though he had some sort of theme he was trying to go off of, and it still goes to number one of the Billboard top
Mhm.
100, and he sold the
Right.
equivalent of 100,000 units in the first week. It's crazy the star power he has just in and of himself.
Yeah. So now the question is, what does the next album do? Because it makes sense that this album was streamed like a fuck ton,
Right.
especially in a relatively low streaming week that is the Christmas week.
Mhm.
So it makes sense people were checking this out. Will they check out the next one? You know, how big is his core
Yeah.
audience actually? We don't know. We'll see. Did he lose a lot of people with this? He certainly lost casual people, I would say. But are enough of his hardcore fans satisfied with this? Is this what they wanted? Will they still be there for him for his next album?
Yeah,
I do
it's
think
interesting.
Cardi might be one of the people that would be benefited by not waiting a super long time before dropping again
Yeah,
versus letting it die out. You know.
it's interesting because there's a lot of factors that can go into that, obviously. But I am interested to see how this album is kind of like lives on in like the moderate Cardi fans, not like the hardcore ones who are going to stand for anything, but the ones who really thought the early music was good, and if this can be palatable to them as well. So why don't we move on though to a Hulu show? We talked about the first three episodes that were dropped back in November. A Teacher, the Hannah Fidel TV series, also did a short movie, which you can find on Hulu if you want to.
Sundance movie.
This wrapped up a 10 episode run, um, and I, I found myself incredibly disappointed, especially from where the show started. And I think the content already is a hard one to sit with because you're talking about as they kind of very clearly lay out with the friend teacher who Kate Mara
Mhm.
shares what's going on. That's a huge abuse of power, and that you're really dealing with like a huge uh, unacceptable dynamic between these two in terms of their sexual relationship. And um, that already was like kind of not my favorite thing to watch. And then you kind of take the last like three episodes of this series, which felt so just like shoehorned in, and just kind of like they felt like they had to put it in there just so that they didn't get too much criticism for the series. And it just felt like a total misfire in a lot of ways for me. How are you feeling as you finished up A Teacher?
Yeah, I mean, I was already lukewarm coming in after we saw those first three episodes.
Hmm.
FX on Hulu. Then you get the subsequent weekly drops, and I was skeptical of this premise being deep enough to warrant 10 episodes. And I will give them credit for doing short episodes. Every one is
Yes.
sub 30 minutes, like substantially under 30 minutes.
Hmm.
The 30-minute drama is certainly rare, and I think it's actually done well. So it's not actually that much runtime, despite being 10 episodes. Yet it still felt stretched thin through the
Hmm.
first 2/3 of it, and then somehow felt really rushed at the end. And that pacing problem, I think, really harms the show from trying to achieve like moments, like had some high moments that you think if they were reworked, this show could have landed way stronger,
Hmm.
but it just never really gets there. And that's equally disappointing because of how difficult the subject matter is to sit with and process, as you said.
Yeah, I think where maybe the show, going back to those pacing problems you talked about, kind of went off the rails for me, or was moving in the wrong direction for me, is the interesting thing is the fallout to me. The how they rationalize this to the people in their lives afterwards, how Eric especially kind of deals with this trauma of being a victim of this inappropriate relationship, and this not I guess you can say non consensual relationship since he's not 18 when it begins.
Right.
And the fact that we really only get 3 episodes of kind of seeing where Eric's at with that, and a good majority of one of those episodes is focused on how Claire is dealing with that fallout, which I'm not very sympathetic to her at all. It just kind of, to me, felt like they spent more time fetishizing this, you know, female teacher with a young male student relationship, and like, kind of
Mhm.
emphasizing that rather than looking at the the point of the thing, which should be to show how this actually is a very damaging thing to this young person.
Yeah. And I think that the strongest stuff is in the beginning because it's revealed like to the world, when
Hmm.
Claire spills the beans. That's in episode 5. So, oh, in theory, we got half the season to deal with this. But like, going up to episode 5, I actually think they build up that relationship pretty well. Again, it's a little stretched out for me, but
Hmm.
I at least, I guess I understood this attraction, this connection they had to the point where when Mara's spilling the beans while kind of tipsy to her coworker, you're like subconsciously being like, "Oh, don't do that."
Hmm.
It's like that's going to be bad for you, even though that's like a fucked up thing to think about, right? It's like, why would I root against her getting away with this, right?
Yeah.
But then at that point, we don't get the other side for Nick Robinson's character enough. Like, I'm just told he had a hard time with it.
Hmm.
I don't really hear that enough. Like, I don't like see that pan out, like he just struggled.
Yep.
Like, so I'm told. Like that's all I got out of it from him.
Yeah, you really only get to see him in college putting his well-being at risk a lot and not seeming to really give a shit about himself,
Right. Like
which,
none of that was that special to me. Like, oh, he's a young college kid being reckless. Oh,
right.
that's new and noteworthy to me. Like it wasn't enough.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think they did try to like show how he had like very little regard for himself at that point, as he was doing things like hanging on to the top of a car that
Right.
was going like, I don't know, 70 miles per hour and getting thrown off it. But the thing is, by the time we get to him in the last episode, he basically has to spell out to Claire, "Oh, this really affected me," and it's almost kind of like the whole part of him like actually confronting how this thing affected him and the pain that he was feeling as a result of this, being a victim of this relationship, and him like working through that and starting to move on with his life, or starting to process that, is all just kind of yada 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 and then told to us, and then the show's over. And literally, I when we were reviewing this, I thought it was 11 episodes, because that 10th episode ends so abruptly with him just leaving that restaurant, that I felt it was totally rushed and very poorly done. And the thing is, I felt like Kate Mara and Nick Robinson gave pretty good performances. It wasn't, I don't think, anything to them not doing the roles well. I think it was more so the script, and like you said, the pacing
Mm.
was just totally off throughout.
Yep.
So huge disappointment for me. Not really content I would want to engage with all the time anyway, especially with the subject matter, but real miss. So I don't know. Not a good time for that show. But any last thoughts before we move on to some better stuff, maybe?
Do not make it an anthology series, please.
Oh God, I hope not. Uh, why don't we move on to something that is, I don't know, I'd like to be have a follow up to it, which is Tenet, Christopher
Ooh.
Nolan's most recent movie, and maybe we'll come back to that thought at the end. But I got around to this, Dave, over the winter break. This was on my list, and I got a sound bar for Christmas, so I especially was
Mm.
like, all right. Dave said, got to have the best sound possible going into this. Got to really lock in, and I did twice. Made sure I got 2 viewings in on my rental, and I was totally blown away. You think about Christopher Nolan movies, and I think you know this, and I know that you're a big Christopher Nolan fan, but I'm a huge Christopher Nolan guy. Pretty much love every movie he's made. I can't really think of one that I don't really like.
Have you seen his two of his early ones, Insomnia and Following? I actually still have not seen those.
I think I've seen Insomnia. I believe that's with Christian Bale, right?
I don't even remember. I
Maybe
don't even
not.
know. I
I don't
know
know.
those are like
So
his
those two
probably
are
two of
fuzzy.
his least liked ones, alongside like Dark Knight Rises, I guess.
But I guess for everything that from those on, I've really enjoyed. And this movie going into it, I heard the mixed reception. A lot of people were saying this is really good Nolan, not great Nolan. A lot of people saying this is just too confusing, too out there.
Right.
Some people saying this is almost too meta in a
Too
way.
much Nolan. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was intrigued to see what we got. And I think what I liked most about this movie is, especially in a year when we haven't really gotten a ton of movies like this to just vibe with. Um, I was just totally taken by John David Washington and Robert Pattinson just being super charming the whole time.
Yeah.
We're going on this like espionage thriller the whole time with amazing set pieces, and I didn't necessarily find the concept like totally off putting. Like I thought it was, the more you think about it and the more you try to really get into the finer details of things, you're like, does that really make sense? Why didn't he have to wear a mask to breathe oxygen then, but he did then? Like that's the sort of thing where you can start to get lost in the sauce. But if you just take it for what it is, I think it's a
Hmm.
super enjoyable movie, and that's really where I was left with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I haven't revisited it yet. I would like to. It's been a few months. I was lucky enough to see it in the theater, so it's been a little bit for me. But what struck me, I think, is that it's definitely a lot of Nolan. I think that is right. It's like very meta, and like the sound comment, like there are moments where this movie is like hard to hear,
Mhm.
which harkens back to like Bane
Right.
and Tom Hardy wearing a mask in Dunkirk. You know, that's almost like Nolan being like, "Oh, you thought that was hard to hear? Fuck off, then." You know, and even though
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense to like it's unintelligible. Like when I was in the theater, I was like, "Do I have an ear infection? Like, am I congested right now? Is it me?" And
Yeah.
then like weeks later, I'm like, "Oh, it wasn't me. Nice." You know. Um,
Yeah.
but even with that, like, um, and especially since the fallout of the movie where Tenet uh, did not make enough money to turn a profit, and it in a sense it failed at the box office despite making, I think, $350 million, whatever it ended up being. I'm just worried that this might spell the end for Nolan getting big budgets, because Nolan was one of the last people out there that could get big budgets for original shit, you know?
Mhm.
Because Nolan himself is an IP, is a brand. He's like Tarantino. Like people go to see him. They don't care what he's doing. They just want to see his shit because of the track record he has. I hope that's not gone due to, his assumingly burned bridges with Warner Brothers after the HBO Max stuff. So I would hate to see this be the last blockbuster he made, but it's kind of cool to like think about his run, because this is his James Bond movie. This is
Right.
Nolan does James Bond, right? And like you have Interstellar, Nolan does space, Dunkirk,
Mhm.
Nolan does war. Like you have all these things he's done. Um, and I hope we continue to get more of that, because again, even if I don't think this is top tier Nolan, but that also would say a lot if it was. He has
Mhm.
made a lot of great movies and a lot of good movies. So the fact
Yep.
that this is just one of his good movies, and is so blockbuster and big and ambitious, like I like the people that say this shit sucks. Like I just don't understand. Like how do you watch like John David Washington and Pattinson be debonair as fuck in the beginning and be like, nah, I don't like this. Like what? Like
Right.
it's great, and the action itself is good. This is some of his best action he's ever done, and it's like I'm just confused that like knowing every single line of the plot suddenly matters to so many people, because that is not the case with lots of other blockbusters that people like.
Right. I think about the Chris Hemsworth movie that came out on Netflix earlier in the year. What was it?
Extraction.
Yes, Extraction. And how someone could like watch that, and that has awesome set pieces too, and awesome
Yeah, well done
action
action.
moments.
Mm.
And then watch something like Tenet and be like, no, that's a good movie, but Tenet is just too much, too confusing. It's like I saw a fucking plane crash into the side of a building while a guy was fighting his own self in reverse. Like that was fucking awesome, dude. Like and
Yeah.
the fact that like
The
you get
Mumbai jump where they
oh
bungee
my
jump
god,
20
backwards,
stories. Fucking
so good,
epic.
so good, and just like the way that John David Washington fights off those guys after talking to Elizabeth Debicki.
Mhm.
I ordered my hot sauce an hour ago, and then just like goes to town on those guys. Like that's like a fucking action star making moment. Like that scene
Yeah.
will be go on John David Washington's Hall of Fame, but you can walk away from this movie and be like, ah, that sucked. Like even if you don't totally get the inner mechanics of the Nolan world, and you can look at almost any Christopher Nolan movie that takes on like an original concept like Inception,
Mhm.
and you're like, you pick that apart, doesn't really make sense. But if you just go in, you're just like, I just want to enjoy this movie. I feel like there's no way you can really walk away and be like, I didn't like that. So
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. And it's really funny to think back again, like again, the meta nature of it all. Time being such a big presence with lots of Nolan's movies, and Tenet, I agree, is the most challenging of his movies in that regard because the whole construction of how the plot actually progresses is so dependent on your grasping how time functions in Tenet.
Right.
And then you contrast that with stuff that is, in retrospect, really simple. Like Dunkirk, oh, there's three timelines. One's a day, one's a week, and one is an hour, whatever it was. I forget, you
Yeah,
know.
and if
But
and
like
if I
it was
remember, they
super
spelled it
super
out.
straightforward, right?
Right.
And like Inception, which literally is not confusing in the least because the time is still normal. It's
Right.
just dream within a dream. Like
Right.
and like Interstellar, where Interstellar, it's all science based, like the concept of a light year, you know,
Mhm.
and like time progressing at different rates depending on where you are in gravity and stuff. And yeah, are there liberties with that science in Interstellar? Of course there is. All the black hole shit's theoretical anyway, right? And of
Mhm.
course, the ending of Interstellar has long been mocked, and you
Yes.
can separate that. But like, I feel like it's, and of course, Memento, right, which is
Mhm.
basically it's just non-linearity. That's
Right.
all, and it makes for a great twist. And then when you watch the movie again, you're see it in a completely different light. All
Mhm.
that shit I really find really simple. And Tenet, yeah, Tenet's tougher. I think part of that's because that the like plots of the story of Tenet is probably more convoluted than most of Nolan's stuff. So it's harder to keep on task with the time stuff, but still, it's still so thrilling, entertaining, and looks like $1 million that I don't know how people don't have a good time.
Yeah. I don't know either. It's I think back to just like even if you just like want to say fuck the concept, like I'm just gonna follow what's happening and not even try to really understand the time part of it. I still think you can kind of get the sense that like the first half you're kind of rushing to try to stop them from getting this thing, and then once they get it you just have to kind of go backwards and go through the whole thing. It's just a total flex by Nolan to be like, all right, I just
Hmm.
showed you this movie this way and I'm just going to do the whole thing backwards, and then we're going to have one big battle scene at the end. And it's like,
Yeah.
sure, like I can dig it. I mean, like I said, if you really want to pick it apart, like there are moments when like Robert Pattinson's character doesn't have to wear oxygen, but other people,
Mhm.
and I'm like, wouldn't they have to do that if he went that direction or that turnstile? But
Turnstile.
right, but like, who cares? Like, it really
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I don't know. Where would you put this on your Nolan rankings?
Oh shit. Yeah, I should have had this better prepared. Um, um,
I
I'm a
mean,
huge
for
Inception person. That was my best movie of the decade.
yeah,
Check that out, youtube.com/nostalgia pod. A year
check
later,
it.
that's still the case for me. So I have Inception 1. That's the
Dark
thing. I
Knight.
think that's what's so fun about Nolan is he has a lot of uh, worthy picks. Like I
Yeah.
think like Memento, I feel like people have basically underrated at this point because it's been 20 plus years, and once you watch it once, it's not the same as watching it again. I understand all that. So I don't. I also don't have Memento like super high, relatively speaking.
Hmm.
I really like Interstellar because I'm a sci-fi person. Like I don't give a fuck about the end show at the bookcase. Like everything else is such a fucking slap. Like
The Matt Damon heel turn in that is all
oh,
time.
talk about like unexpected cameos. You
Yeah.
know, um, and just I think that's a movie that's like super thrilling in terms of like showing interstellar space travel. Like
Yep.
that and Ad Astra, like there's really nothing close in terms of the actual travel stuff. Obviously, there's great sci-fi stuff like 2001 and Alien, but like in terms of like the travel aspect and like the grandeur, and then again like the existential threat that was
Yep.
happening on Earth, like I think Interstellar has become underrated. Like Dark Knight, everyone hypes Dark Knight for good reason. don't have anything really to add there.
Hmm.
And I also really like Dunkirk. I don't know if Dunkirk's the most fun to revisit, but it's really impressive movie and should be at like the top of the list as well because of just I think how well made it is and also really smart.
Yeah, I think Tenet probably is like 4 or 5 for me. I'm probably gonna go Inception, Dark Knight, Prestige, and then I don't know. Dunkirk is up there. It's just a really well done movie. Batman Begins, I also really like. I think Ra's al Ghul is one of the best villains, outside in the Batman
Mm.
comics that we've gotten. So, yeah, it's probably like 4 or 5 for me. It's right around that tier, and I mean, you get like you said, you get Christopher Nolan doing basically a James Bond movie, and it's just super charming and fun. And watching it a second time so close together, you really do pick up on so many more things, especially the Pattinson of it all. Like his
Yeah,
character makes so much more sense watching it back again. And their interactions make a lot more sense. And I would love to see a follow up to this where they kind of go back from when he gets recruited back in time, because he talks about how they get up to some stuff. So
right.
I'd love to see that relationship as it grows. But
And that's a thing too. Like, there's been critics of the movie that do the stupid shit where you say, "Oh, why didn't you do this instead?" And in this case, it was
wouldn't be that
why
movie.
why wasn't it that movie about Pattinson and stuff? And it's like you could do this with every fucking movie. Like
Mhm.
this isn't valuable to the discourse, in my opinion.
Totally.
Like why didn't you do this? I'm just because he didn't do this. Like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
judge what actually was done, not just
Yeah.
suggest a different plot. Like
I mean, I can definitely fall into that too, where I wish things were done differently, or I would like to see certain people collaborate, or that sort of thing. But
right.
in the end, this is what we got, and that's all we can really
Hmm.
critique off of. So
Yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. I like doing that stuff too, but it's
yeah,
usually with stuff like The Rise of Skywalker, where what we
right.
got isn't worth defending.
And this certainly is in my book. So, Tenet, if you can rent it, I think the rent price went down this
It
week,
did.
so
Yep.
this is a good time to check it out. Why don't we move on though to Midnight Sky? Let's stay in space. We're going to be
Ooh.
talking George Clooney's directorial debut. First
No, no,
time,
no, no, not his debut.
really.
He's directed many movies, man. What are you talking about?
Oh, I guess first direct movies directed in a long time, right? What's been the most
Few
recent one?
years. Suburbicon 2017.
Ah, okay.
That's kind of the rub with Clooney as a director. It's not the best run for him. We have Leatherheads, The Monuments Men, pretty bad film. Suburbicon was a miss thematically. Ides of March with Gosling is like pulpy and fun. And I remember liking it at the time, but I know it's kind of a polarizing movie as well.
I'm realizing I don't know if I've actually ever seen any of these.
Good Night and Good Luck. So,
Yeah. Good. I
but
mean, I've heard of some of these, but I don't. I guess I wasn't aware he directed
it
because I
is
don't think
his
I've ever
first
watched
acting role since he did two of them in 2016.
Hal
Notably would be
Caesar.
Hail Caesar with
Yeah.
the Coens. Um, but like if you think about the Clooney as an actor, like you have that moment, you have his side role in Gravity, which was good. You have to go back all the way to 2011 with The Descendants and '09 with Up in the Air, where you think of like notable Clooney acting performances. So The Midnight Sky being a movie coming out on Netflix, directed by Clooney, whatever, but like starring Clooney, uh, was notable. And like this kind of just drops on December 23rd to like minimal fanfare. It's like, man, this is a big deal. And a
Well,
movie could have been better, but it's a big deal.
well, I think that's the thing I was going to ask is, do you feel like the movie was good enough to really receive that praise? Because while I went into this, and I'm just going to preface by saying a lot of people mentioned to me that they did not like this movie prior to me seeing it, and
Mhm.
I kind of went in expecting it to be really bad. I didn't think it was really all that bad, but I do think
Right.
it just kind of felt a little boring at times. I think it felt like some of the character decisions I didn't totally get, um, and I think the twist was pretty. I think I saw it coming, but
Yeah.
I don't know how other people responded to that.
Right.
What did you think about the movie?
Yeah. I mean, so I found it entertaining. Like there's some flaws. There's holes to poke, but I was most struck with how the movie kind of shifts. when we were barely back in the Arctic with Clooney and this girl in this, the substation, the travel and stuff. And like next thing you know, we're just in this spaceship with Felicity Jones and friends, and it's like, oh, Kyle Chandler. It's like I thought this was like a slow, methodical character movie with Clooney. I didn't know like there's this whole other side plot. Like it really just became the other A plot. And like I think structurally wise, maybe there was things that changed here. But to me, the weakest stuff was the flashbacks where you see young
Oh
Clooney, and
yeah.
it's like I felt like that's didn't do anything. Like, it was not necessary at all. And like I think there was some really cool potential that was missed with the Midnight Sky because again because they get away from it by shifting priorities with the plots. But like early on, right, Clooney is like pulling himself a bowl of cereal, and he like looks behind himself, and there's already a bowl there, and like, oh, okay, he's losing his
He's
mind.
losing
He's
his
by
mind, right?
himself here alone. While he's waiting to die. Interesting. Okay. Next thing you know, oh no, there's a kid there with him. It was the kid, the cereal. And then you realize at the end of the movie with the twist, oh no, no, he really was losing his mind. Like he did make the second bowl and stuff. And I was like, there was so much more meat on that bone.
Yep.
But we're kind of distracted with all this stuff in space. We didn't have time for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, first of all, Ethan Peck, which I'm pretty sure is Gregory Peck's like grandson,
Ooh,
plays the young,
pedigree.
yeah, plays the young George Clooney in this, and I just felt like all of those scenes were so like incredibly wooden. And I get that the character was supposed to be just kind of like a very like reserved guy who was like singularly focused on these, trying to follow his professional pursuits and never really take time for his own life. And that's kind of what we get with these hallucinations that George Clooney is dealing with. And I think, well, I think that there was definitely, I agree, a lot more to explore there. The movie almost kind of gets bogged down into, like you said, the stuff in space and then just like the journey to the other place. Like I would have liked to have seen Clooney, I think, a little bit more um able to like chew on the things that were going around. I felt
Yeah,
like we kind of got him like having to like save this thing or dive underwater and try to save his like dialysis pack, or I think that was dialysis,
something
right?
like
Like,
that. Yeah.
yeah, never really explained. And I think that stuff kind of gets caught up. Like one of the most affecting moments to me was when um they find that ship, right? Or that was it a spaceship or airplane that had crashed, and you know like
Yeah,
the
it was like a big jet.
yeah, and the pilot's like there, and then I think like a storm comes through, and Clooney thinks he loses the little girl, and then he finds her, and he's like, "Oh, I thought I lost you." And like that moment, I was like really like on the edge of my seat, like, is he gonna like find this little girl? Like, what's gonna happen? Then when he finds her, there's really like the sense of, I think this is one of Clooney's like strongest acting moments in the movie. Is he's just totally relieved and like
Mhm.
a bit distraught, and getting that, I was like, I want to see him like grappling with this more, what this little girl actually means to him. And you kind of, I guess, get that wrapped up at the end, but it feels like it doesn't hit emotionally the way it should, because I think we do get caught up in the person dying in space. They're kind of doing like a Martian esque like space travel back, and
Yeah,
then I got totally caught up in Kyle Chandler and I forgot the other guys.
right.
uh, those two characters deciding to go back to Earth, I was just
Mhm.
like, come on, like this is ridiculous.
Well, and that was the thing too. All the stuff up in space, like, I think it's pretty fun, looks good, uh, good talent, but it's all prestige. It's all stuff we've seen before that, like up in space stuff, and like culminating to that set piece. Like, oh wow, really shocked to see the asteroids come back.
Right.
Really shocked to see one of them die as a result. Like everyone saw that coming.
Mhm.
Um, but like, I think the ship also provided some like cool cinematography moments, like the stuff with the ladder in the ship when they're like traveling through and like the center like looked pretty cool. And I think there were some cool shots in the beginning of the Arctic station, and even like the scores from Alexander Day Plot, like it's not like a nothing score either. But I think we really just stick with that ship for a little too long, in my opinion, because I think that the potential of the Clooney character was just more interesting because there's nothing really new happening out in space. Notably, they had to rewrite this movie to make Felicity Jones' character pregnant because she was pregnant in real life. Thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely interesting. What did you think of Felicity Jones in this movie? I mean, it's really at the first time I can remember seeing her since Rogue One in a major
Ooh.
role.
Yeah, it's all right. Um,
It just felt like she didn't get a lot to work with. You know,
no,
she's second build, and it's like, what's her part?
yeah. I mean, they're just kind of moving plot. Like all they're doing is dealing with the what Clooney's communicating to them, right? And
Uh-huh.
like the whole stuff with like, oh, we're gonna turn around, we're gonna restart the human race on that Jupiter moon, because I'm pregnant, we can keep it going. And it's like, um, again, that maybe that could have been cool. Again, shades of Interstellar, but like, uh, it's really rushed through.
Mhm.
So I still enjoyed watching it, but I think uh, script's just okay, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I think for what people told me it was going to be like and what ended up being, I was pleasantly surprised, but
Hmm.
still not a movie that I think will be on our top 10, which we'll be talking about next week for our top 10 of the year 2020. So tune in for that. But why don't we talk about another movie, which I'm interested to hear if it'll be on your top 10, Dave, knowing how big of a DCEU fan you are.
You know me.
Wonder Woman 1984, the Patty Jenkins follow up to uh, her original Wonder Woman, starring Gal Gadot, Chris Pine coming back, baby, Pedro Pascal, Kristen Wiig, star-studded cast. Dropped on Christmas Day on HBO Max, which is notable because this will be something we're talking a lot about with Warner Brothers throughout the next year, as this is their temporary, supposedly plan. Um, and Dave, this movie totally disappointed me as well. um, and it's funny because when we've been talking about these DC movies recently, I think we had felt like some of them are moving in the right direction, right? Shazam, I think we felt
Hmm.
like was a pleasant surprise at how good
Definitely
we felt like it was.
really fun, good
Yeah,
tone.
Aquaman, like
Yeah,
besides some
go for it.
visual, you know, gaffs, maybe I don't even know. Like I guess cheapness. Overall, pretty good.
Yeah. Sidebar on Aquaman. It's still really perplexing that the on land scenes in Aquaman look 100 times worse than the completely fictional CGI underwater stuff. Completely baffling still. But Aquaman, really fun. If
Really
obnoxious
fun.
and nonsense, it's great. It's fun.
So, and even Venom, right? Very flawed movie, but you get to see Tom Hardy being just super weird. You're like,
Well,
okay,
I mean,
like
Venom's Marvel. It's not DC.
I
Don't
guess
don't
that's
give him
right.
that.
That's true.
Birds
But
of Prey would be the most recent
yes,
one
Birds of
from
Prey. Thank you.
right
Yeah,
before this year,
and you know what?
pre-pandemic started anyway.
You know what? Also a fun movie, flawed, but some fun moments. This movie, I think, had a couple of things that I really didn't like, and the main one is I just found Pedro Pascal's bad guy to just be like totally not good at all. Like,
Hit him the
and
fuck up.
yeah, and I'll go a little bit more into why I felt like that wasn't such a good uh, bad guy. But then all the stuff with Kristen Wiig was just totally like I felt like there was a lot more there that could have been explored,
Hmm.
and it just like goes from being like this is a friend to this
Yeah,
person is now this crazy what's her name, like Apex Predator.
Cheetah.
Yeah, Cheetah, the Apex Predator, and yeah, just that was totally flubbed. And also like what did we really allow Gal Gadot to do with this movie that it let her
Nothing.
shine? Nothing. And so like it just feels like everything was flubbed about it. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Is this movie Wonder Woman 1984 has been really raked over the coals online
Mhm.
since Christmas, and I think if this had been a normal year, this had come out in June like expected, and it wasn't the only superhero movie of the year. We also had Birds of Prey and Black Widow and Eternals and even New Mutants. Like it would have been disliked and still criticized, but it wouldn't have been to this degree. I think
Right.
because this is right to our homes, anticipated because there was nothing really else,
Mhm.
besides Soul. Like people kind of had the pitchforks ready
Yeah.
as a result. And like in a normal world, it wouldn't have been to this degree. But
Mhm.
movie's still not really that good. But it's just kind of interesting to see like the vitriol for the product to be like really amplified
Yeah.
given our current circumstances. And funny enough, it actually grossed in the U.S. the most in opening weekend since March with
Hell yeah.
16.7 million, actually beating Tenet's opening weekend. And it had since had a really steep decline in its second weekend, which again shows you what the times we're in, because normally the holiday calendar every weekday is like a weekend, and it's
Right.
anything but. So the movie's falling fast at the box office. It will not do Tenant numbers
Mhm.
domestically, but it's been doing decently internationally. But it was interesting to see that kind of vitriol. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that there's just so many like cracks in the hull that you're just kind of confused to how it got to this point. And just something I was theorizing is, we remember when Wonder Woman comes out in 2017, big hit, kind of quite easily the most critically well liked consensus wise of the DCE movies to that point. Also, the biggest opening weekend for a female director, solo female
Mhm.
director, like a really notable movie for many reasons. And like, oh wow, well, we're fast tracking a sequel. Patty Jenkins is back. Gal Gadot's already got her big contract. Blah blah blah. I wonder if the fast tracking hurt this, because
Mhm.
this movie, I believe this movie was filmed like nearly 2 years ago. Like it's been in the can because of the effects work, but like they kind of crapped this out fast, and parts of it kind of feel like you could tell. And like I remember when they cast Kristen Wiig, I was like, Kristen Wiig, that's strange to me.
Mhm.
But I actually think she was really well cast for the beginning of the movie, the best part of
Right.
Wonder Woman 1984. She was really good at that stuff, where like the character is kind of like meek and like doesn't have the self confidence, but you can understand why she befriends Diana. But the
Yep.
turn to Cheetah was just so sloppy, and came out of nowhere, basically, right? So it's like you just see like these issues with the plotting of the film. And as you said earlier, when it comes to effects with DCU, it's very up and down. And I think this one, it's like, I mean, just action wise, so it's not really like super notable action. I
Mhm.
feel like that moment where she's flying up in the clouds and like riding the lightning, that definitely would have hit way better in the theater, no question.
Totally. Yep.
But like, I remember just watching like the mall chase, like the only
Mhm.
time we get like serious 80s vibes.
Yep.
Um, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is kind of whatever, right? For Wonder Woman doing Wonder Woman stuff. And like,
Yeah. And
I'm speaking the 80s stuff, like it's billed as 84. We're gonna go back in
mhm.
time, see some Diana doing shit in the 80s. Cool. It's barely 80s anything in this.
I
That's
know.
really lame.
You get like the one scene of Chris Pine
Yeah,
trying on like men's 80s fashion and
which was
no
great.
needle drops, no 80s
Yeah.
songs, just like blasting at any point. I mean,
Yep.
just what a crime. You know,
Everyone has parachutes now? Hilarious.
I know. And that's the thing is like, I think that first hour, even if like not a lot happens like plot wise, it's fun. Like you're kind of just enjoying being with those characters. And then once the plot really starts picking up and Maxwell Lord starts taking all the wishes and stuff, that's when it just
Hmm.
starts to become too much. And um going to Pedro Pascal's character, right, as like the wishing stone, how he becomes the wishing stone. And like I get that the movie's trying to like talk about gratitude and like being thankful for what you have or the time that you get with someone and like not not wasting your life wishing that you had more of something. And if you want to talk about like the curse of more, Bill Simmons has written about it for the last like 20 years. Go read his articles about it. But you know, I really feel like there's a lot more interesting stuff to be explored with the juxtaposition of Diana and Barbara, and like
Yeah.
how Barbara is gaining these powers and the confidence it's giving her, and Diana losing the powers and what that's taking away from her, and like how it kind of how that power, the loss of it, kind of changes those people. And I think if they had been maybe focused more on Kristen Wiig's character a bit more, perhaps the movie would have been a bit stronger. Because I think when it's just Pedro Pascal taking on more wishes, looking grosser, becoming more hammy, that's when it's
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm really losing this. And the more you think about like the wishing stuff, you want to go back to like picking apart movie concepts like Tenet. Why didn't someone just wish for all this to stop? Like, wouldn't that have ending
Yeah.
things. Like, I don't know. There's like a lot of, is everybody wishing for bad stuff? I don't.
Right. And that was actually a criticism that was starting to get lobbed around too, is this is taking place in the DCU continuity in 1984, where Superman is only a baby, but Batman's like 15. Did Batman wish for his parents to come back? And like, not a criticism because Batman's not in the movie. Like, you
Right.
can't really make
Doesn't
that
matter.
point. But like, they actually like barely touch on the fact that all the wishes get renounced at the end from
Right.
like Diana's speechifying. And it's like, and like, I don't even mind that stuff really at all. To me, it's like the whole like Cold War, nuclear arms race stuff. We got to that real quick. And like, we're also jumping in like with geopolitical stuff in the Middle East with oil and stuff. And I'm like, this is all kind of quick and
Yeah.
not that well thought out. Like that action set piece in the desert on the road, it's was kind of mediocre. And that's the thing. Like, if Wonder Woman was more had more to do, I think a lot of these other sins are easier to forgive. But like, Diana doesn't even have that many lines, and like a lot of her lines kind of stink. It's like, you need to give me the stone, and it's like, come on, man. Like, and then actually, there's a really great negative review about on the movie from Angelica Jade Bastine on Vulture, and she gets into like, as a big Wonder Woman fan, a big part of the character is her femininity and her relationship with women, and that's kind of where the movie fails the most because, as you said, that stuff with Barbara just did not crystallize the way it should have,
Mhm.
and you're kind of failing Wonder Woman by taking away this big part of what makes her who she is, you know. And like, I like the Themyscira
Yeah.
flashback at the beginning, just cool to see. It's pretty, but like, thematically, I don't think it actually amounted to much because they do a whole nother opening to the movie right after it anyway. So
Mhm.
yeah, it just has a lot of strange faults that kind of feel like dated mistakes when it comes to big IP at this point.
Yeah. And you know that if you want to just go in and like you said, I think if this hadn't been released the way it was, it probably would have just been like there were some cool scenes,
Mhm.
bad villains,
Like
and
Venom.
yeah,
Venom has a lot of
definitely.
these same kind of problems, but like, there's also stuff that you can kind of latch on to, like the ridiculousness of the Venom character and Tom Hardy being weird and shit, you know?
Right. And like I really thought that that fight scene in the White House was pretty cool and pretty well done. Very like aesthetically pleasing. One of the stronger moments I felt throughout the movie. Um but when it is under the microscope the way it is, and especially when there's a lot of different takes on if people are happy or not that movies with this size budget are being released straight to your television, I think it's going to be under scrutiny a bit more. So it uh, feels probably more disappointing than it would have. Now, I wanted to just kind of throw out there real quick, right? So, uh, what's like the next step for this? Like, I mean, I assume there's probably going to be another Wonder Woman. I think that's actually already been announced, right? So,
Well, and that was another talking point, was they quickly announced, Deadline had it, that DC Films is fast tracking Wonder Woman 3 with both Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot set to return. As I said before, fast tracking might not be the best thing when it comes to plotting these kinds of movies. And also, a lot of people are actually saying like, this actually means literally nothing. They're just saying this to say this, and also to like make their HBO Max decision look good. Don't read anything into it. But either way, that's the official word that Wonder Woman 3 is on the way ASAP.
we're getting a lot of stories right now about how there's going to be the multiverse with DCU now.
Yeah,
That we're going to be getting multiple Batmans,
Flashpoint
multiple, yeah,
inducing it.
exactly. Do you think this might be another hero that would benefit from having like a multiverse, like another Wonder Woman or Wonder Woman going to different places or different timelines?
Huh. And that's the thing, because going into 1984, you're like, okay, that's like the one like concrete pillar DCEU has is Wonder Woman. You
Hmm.
have great casting. Gal Gadot, I think, is not like the best actor ever, but she's good as Wonder
Strong
Woman and
Wonder
definitely
Woman.
looks the part, and has like the action chops for it. and Patty Jenkins seems to be a talented helmer, and she seems to be invested in this franchise. So how? So we don't have to worry about that. Let's get Batman, Superman figured out, and like get that stuff back going and whatnot. And let's get the Flash movie actually made, right? But like now, it still would not be my priority. I think they'll just make Wonder Woman 3, and it's in all likelihood will be better than this one, and we'll be on our way. And then depending on
So
like Gal Gadot's contract, which I don't know if we actually know how many options she has on it, like there could be more. Um, you look at the DC, like Walter Hamada profile in New York Times let out like the plan that DC is trying to ramp up with films and smaller scale films on HBO Max. So it feels like they're beginning to really kick this into high gear because remember there's been a big leadership change in terms of running these movies. So I don't know how rash they would be to like make any huge changes to the character because it seems like Patty Jenkins and Gal are both pretty invested in the direction of this where Wonder Woman goes. So yeah, I mean I don't know, but like then again, given her age, yeah, you could just make a movie during any time you want, I guess,
yeah,
because it's fine. And in this case, yeah, like a lot of cataclysmic shit happen. I guess they all forget about it with the lasso of truth, and it doesn't matter. And then she shows up in Batman vs Superman. No one who knows who she is. I guess that's what we're supposed to believe. But like, there's still so much room to do anything you want. It's the DCEU. It's barely
yeah,
started.
yeah, yeah. It's just feels like such a step backwards for this particular franchise within the
Yeah,
DCU. It's like I hope the next movie is a little bit better, and I just hope that if they're gonna do something like a gimmick like 1984 or a time period or a year, like actually lean into it because I think if this had been something where it was like very obviously you're going for like Stranger Things vibes, like that's kind of what the mall scene felt like a little bit in the beginning. It's like okay, go for that vibe, like really
yeah.
go for it. But it just
Hmm.
felt in so many ways like they hedged in every direction and came up with a very mediocre movie. So,
Right.
uh, disappointing. Last thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984.
Well, I think there's one important note as well, which is that the introduction of Chris Pine, which I'm all for because I love Chris Pine. He's the best Hollywood Chris. But
False.
in process of this, Chris Pine occupies this random character's body, and him and Diana just fuck a lot, and like the whole aspect of like primordial consent comes up, and like that's just not
Yeah.
something you need to introduce into your IP movie. Is
Yeah.
shit that's like the more you think about it, the grosser it is.
Yeah.
Like again, love Chris Pine. You want to bring him back, say he comes back somehow. I don't give a shit. Do it. It's superhero movies. I don't care what happens. But like that doing it that way was not smart in my opinion.
Yeah. It was a strange choice for sure. Also, Chris Pine very much I think in the second half of this movie just has nothing to do until he goes
Yeah,
away. So
nothing.
it's just a waste, in my opinion. So, all right, why don't we finish up though with the other movie that you alluded to was dropped on Christmas Day on Disney Plus. We're starting to get more of that Disney Plus content. WandaVision in 2 more weeks, Dave. Soul, Disney's Soul, Disney Pixar Soul, I should say. Pete Doctor,
Mm.
known for being the manipulator of all of our emotions growing up. Um, or at least being a part of them. At the helm of this one and Soul. I don't know. I guess I'll let you kind of take the lead with this. Because I've been interested to hear. Did you like Soul?
Did like Soul. Did like Soul. Going in, I knew it was the next Pixar film from Pete Docter, as you said, who has since been elevated to the CCO of Pixar. He's effectively the main creative voice at Pixar now, with since John Lasseter's disgraced exit.
Mm.
And you look at that CV; he's been involved with many of them, but he's directly created Monsters Inc., Up, Inside Out, and now Soul. And it's like, wow, it's quite the run. And
Yeah,
seeing that it's like his specific follow up to Inside Out and thematically has a lot to do with Inside Out was notable, and knowing that going in, I think was interesting. And I can't help but think about Inside Out a lot when I watch Soul because of how they do things differently. And yeah, I did like it. I think Soul is intentionally more vague than Inside Out, but both of the movies, like presenting these like abstract ideas in like a tangible physical way. Like you see again, like you see the inside of someone's brain and all their emotions, or you see literally the manifestation of someone's soul. Like you see these things physically presented. I do feel like it kind of tells you what to think a lot. Like
Hmm.
I like Inside Out a lot. I don't like it as much as everyone else because I think it's kind of like it's writing everything on the chalkboard of how you're supposed to watch it because you literally know what the emotion is, like who they are. Like it's really, I feel like it's kind of simple, but it's still like really impressive at the same time. And for me, because Soul's like more vague, I guess I appreciate it more. Like I was thinking, like when you watch the montage at the end for the character, you're watching. I'm like, oh wow, okay, oh this is kind of deep. I don't really know how I should take this one. Whereas for Inside Out, I feel like it was very specific of how you were supposed to feel, like what you were supposed to think at the end.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do think there's parts of Inside Out that are a little bit more nuanced than just like this is sad or this is angry, and you kind of see that at the end with like the core memories being mixed with sadness and joy and
Hmm.
all the different feelings. But uh, yeah, I do think this is a one of those headier Pixar movies, and I was kind of left as I finished it, just kind of wondering how this would really connect with children. And I've seen mixed
Right.
comments online where some kids I think really enjoy it, and certainly when they're in the I guess it's the afterlife or the pre-life or whatever it is, the
The
great
Great
beyond,
Before.
great before. Um, they're these cute little. You can see them right on Dave's screen. Cute little like I don't know globby looking things, ghosts maybe. And then once they are, but then once they're on Earth, they look so realistic as humans. I guess one is a cat for a lot of the movie, so I guess there's
Right.
like certain parts that maybe kids will mesh with
Hijinks.
more. But this is really a Pixar movie for adults. Like this feels very much like this was made for that generation that grew up with these movies. And I think while something like Inside Out you mentioned um, is a movie that can I think it hits more for adults on a lot more levels, but for kids, you watch and you can explain the movie to them in
Yeah.
you know
There's just
and
way
it's
more humor in Inside Out.
right. And this is a lot more an introspective and thoughtful movie, and definitely interested to see how kids connect. But I definitely connect a lot with it, and it really made me reflect a lot on kind of what it is that we all get caught up on it and what we're missing just in our
Mm.
day-to-day lives, and that rat race we're on to succeed or move forward. We're kind of missing those little things that do make life colorful and fun. And definitely I mean I didn't end up crying at this movie, which I was kind of surprised at. I kind of expected to
Mm.
have that one big weeping moment. I don't know if you kind of got teary-eyed or not, but I didn't feel like it hit that hard emotionally, but just more thoughtful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing because like the conclusion that like the beginning of the movie, like or the middle of the movie, like you're thinking, oh, gotta find my spark. What's my spark? So I know
Right.
what I'm supposed to do, and I can then go and finally accept going to Earth, right, and starting a life. And like
Mhm.
then the movie gets to the point where like, oh, there is no spark. Like in like it's like your purpose is just to want to live. Like it is like way more simple and still abstract. And I'm like, huh, interesting.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like with Inside Out, it's like, oh, it's okay to be sad sometimes. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I got that. Okay, gotcha. And I feel like for a lot of people, that's a great thing to have here in mainstream entertainment that see how they've struggled with something like that, see that expressed. Whereas for like a Soul, I don't know if like Soul is super serving to anyone besides just like whimsical adults, you know?
Right.
And like as you said for the kids stuff, like the hijinks of like an adult being in a cat's body and how that unfolds, like some body humor. Apart from that, like and like the souls bouncing around when you're in the great before, like I really wonder like what the kids like about it because obviously thematically they really have no clue what's going on.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, I think this is some of the best like 3D CGI we've got from
Oh,
Pixar in a while, specifically the stuff in New York. Like New
Yeah.
York felt really fully realized in a great way, like some subtle New York stuff, just like kind of like being in like Lower Manhattan and like a really funny Nick's joke, like the New York the pizza rat cameo,
Yeah.
like the New York stuff was good.
Yeah,
So
the subway
mhm,
was like breathtaking. Like how they kind of got that so perfect, the look and feel of it. I loved how they kind of put it in sepia tone. It was like a late autumn type feel
sure,
to it a lot of the time. I thought that was really cool, and uh, I think the interesting thing. I mean, I know you had what's his name, the guy who was like the bad guy. I can never pronounce how to
Terry
say his name. Terry, but the actor Richard Ayoade.
Ayoade, yes,
Yeah,
comedian.
um, he he's a he's not really that bad of a guy. Like, there's no real
Yeah,
antagonist besides like the fact that Jamie Foxx's Joe dies. And he needs to
yeah.
get back to his body,
That,
and I
that
think
that's the conflict is death.
right, and that's a really heady thing to be working with, and um, I definitely found certain moments a little bit more engaging than others. One portion that I found particularly engaging was Graham Norton as Moonwind, and
Hmm.
his whole thing
Yeah,
as like the spiritual uh, guide or pirate or whatever he is. I forgot exactly, but I found that to be very interesting. Graham Norton also just an amazing voice actor. I don't know if you've ever like watched his interviews, but he's a
yeah,
really
he's awesome.
awesome, yeah, great talk show host and just shows out in this. I also really liked the scene where they've kind of switched bodies at this point, and Joe's student comes and Tina Fey's in his body and kind of he coaches her how to like
Hmm.
go through the and play the part, and that kind of awakens 22 a bit to like,
Yeah,
oh, this is like a very cool thing about life.
yeah. Shout out Kemp Powers who co-directs this movie and also wrote the film. We'll be talking about him soon because he also wrote One Night in Miami and Soul. Kemp Powers, the first African American to co-direct a Pixar movie. Soul, the first African American to be a protagonist in a Pixar movie. That in itself is notable, but also you think about the best. I think it's some of the best scenes are like aspects of Black culture, like
The
the
barbershop.
camaraderie at the barbershop,
Yeah.
or even like his relationship with his mom and her coworkers. Like
Hmm.
that's a scene that the mom scene, when he gets the suit, and it's like that's like a really deep scene, like a really like sad scene, I think, for adults. Also, like moves the plot along, um,
Yep.
and like
Yeah.
it's funny, like again, like thinking about Soul, like I feel like what people do lots in meta nature, the meta nature of Pixar is think about like, oh, it's a movie for really adults that also entertains the kids, and like in the case of Soul. We're walking back from death. Like the death happens really early on. I think almost like in your face how quick it is. Whereas uh, stuff like Coco, it's like we're getting to the death at the end, right? So
Yeah.
like, and this was a new tact for Pixar and for Pete Docter to like attempt to do this in a different way, um, and also like the presence of jazz throughout the movie
Hmm.
and like good stuff, and even like the like you have Angela Bassett as like the saxophone player, just completely overqualified for this like small role, but like
Yeah.
heck, like I feel like everyone can sympathize with that play. It's like, oh, like you had these like creative dreams, you didn't quite ever have a chance to get to that point. And again, like it's followed up with the barbershop scene where he's talking to the barber who had wanted to be a veterinarian, but he doesn't
Hmm.
mean he's sad about where he's at. He's quite the opposite, right? And it's like again, like bec- it's kind of telling you exactly how to feel along the way, but it's still like I think a really warm, effective feeling. So, but again, I was most impressed with the end montage where like you're watching that like realization of like the
Yeah.
life's journey and all that stuff, and then like because you can apply this to yourself in terms of like purpose and your spark and whether you
Hmm.
need a spark or not, right? It's like because it's more ambiguous at the end. I think that's why I like it the most.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely a very well done movie. Even if it didn't necessarily reach my very lofty expectations for it, I don't consider this a disappointment at all. I think this is definitely one of the best movies of the year. Shout out to your guy Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who I think turned in a really great score for
Kings
this
of
as well.
scores at this point.
For real, they well, and also we didn't talk about it with Tenet, but it's the same guy that did the Mandalorian, Ludwig,
Ludwig Göransson.
yeah, Göransson, and he's been killing it as well. They're probably the top two in the game right now. Those
Yep,
composers. So,
definitely.
um, yeah, I think overall just an achievement from Pixar. They just continue to be the most consistent
Yep.
studio for sure.
Yeah, it seems pretty likely that it'll be nominated for Best Picture. It's at least on the bubble right there. Uh, Pour one out for Wolfwalkers, which is just going to get its clock cleaned for Best Animated Feature. Um,
Yeah,
I know there's some fans that really would want Wolfwalkers get the win, but I just don't think it's happening when you have an animated movie like Soul that is operating on like a higher level by just thematically just being interested in more adult stuff. Like when you
yeah.
do that in animation, you're just gonna attract more admirers. That's not Wolfwalker's fault, but that's just what happens when you get a good Pixar movie in your way.
Dave, this is a good way to end this show. We don't really have much for next week except for our top tens. Should we talk about for movies? Anything else?
Also, Pieces of a Woman comes out on Netflix, a notable film starring Vanessa Kirby, whose performance has been widely lauded thus far and will likely be nominated. So hit that movie and then talk about all the other movies from 2020. Exciting.
And we'll be making a 2021 nostalgia best of music playlist on Spotify. So follow that. Although I don't think any of these Cardi songs are gonna make it. So we'll wait to something
Negative.
better to start the playlist off with. But go follow our 2020 best of music list because it's really good. Dave, I'll catch you next week as well as the other people and the listeners. Peace out.